Hello, FusionAuth friends. Welcome back to TownHall version 0.7 already. I can't believe we've gotten through 7 of these. So we had a little bit of a break since last time. Thanksgiving snuck in there, and then we were off at reInvent, which Matt, you were there as well. Welcome in, Matt Hathcock. How's it going, Matt?
Good. Thanks for having me, Alex.
Are you recovered from reInvent yet?
Yeah, recovered. I was fortunate enough not to bring any bug back with me. So,
Yes, same. Well, we'll see. It keeps kind of creeping in. We'll see how it goes for the rest of this week. But my feet are back to normal. I was walking like 9 miles a day, I think, at reInvent, which was pretty crazy, but fun at the same time.
yeah, I love
Um,
walking.
I wanted to throw up just so you probably saw this around a little bit. So this was our reInvent post, and I got to meet a lot of different people where I wore this hat, and you probably saw me. So we did some cool developer interviews and gave away swag and stuff like that, which was super fun. And I have a quick little video to show off of us kind of time lapsed at reInvent. So here we go. It was nuts. I mean, look how many people were there. I think they were estimating 70,000. They were between like 50 and 60-ish. But that's what it was like. I mean, it was madness the whole time. How many hands do you think you shook?
Um, 20,000 maybe. I mean, there was definitely a lot.
Yeah.
Most people still doing the fist bump, but talked to a ton of people for sure.
I bet you I went across upwards of like 20 to 30,000 people. Like our booth just had a good amount of traffic. It was kind of on a main hallway, so it was a lot to take in. It was pretty interesting. But in further news, a couple things since we've gotten back. Let me share the right screen here. We have a cool new post from a customer of ours that we kind of did. We do a couple like email type snippets from customers here and there. And this is from the South Australian Territory. I can never pronounce that word right. Admission Center. So SATAC for short is much easier to say. Just a little back and forth. Dan asked some questions. Rob responded. It was pretty cool. It sounds like they have some social login that they're working through currently and looking to extend even further. We have a video up from our founder, which I got to sit and watch. I think, Matt, you were there too.
Yes.
We got to watch Brian talk all about the evolution of user logins. So definitely check this out. The reason I started on our main page here, it's down in the list under FusionAuth related videos. And Brian talks. He's got a pretty funny talk in here, basically about how someone stole his not his bank credentials, but like the credits piece of his banking. So they were able to kind of socially hack into that and get some things changed, and just the evolution from like Yahoo login all the way to current day and how we handle that now. So definitely check that out as well. On the release notes side of things, we did have a new release this week, 1.48.3. This fixes an issue with the update refresh token time to live. So when you're in that kind of expiration period for a jot, there's a little bit of a bug, nothing major, wouldn't cause anything majorly concerned, but that was fixed as well this week. So definitely update. Shouldn't be a major one at all if you're running FusionAuth currently and you're in that 1.48 range. All right, Matt, you are the star of our show today, and I am going to pick your brain a little bit. And the first thing you shared with me at reInvent was an amazing story on actually how you got started at FusionAuth. And I want you to go all the way back to like that journey of coming in.
Okay. Yeah, I definitely tell this story a lot. So but it's a fun one, I
It's a good
think.
one.
So I was a Java engineer back in like 2021. And before that, though, I had a pretty extensive career with a lot of customer facing opportunities and realized that I wanted more of that back in my life. And so I decided I had some friends that were in tech sales and thought that was calling my name and was looking around on LinkedIn and saw, I think it was a sales executive or account executive opportunity for this little company called FusionAuth. And so I applied and I got an email back. And at the time, I don't remember what they were using, but it was a one-way interview where they read a question to you and then you click a button and hits record and you start talking into the camera. So it's about as awkward as it sounds. And I ended up not, feeling like I totally bombed it. I made sure to go find Brian Ponarelli on LinkedIn, reached out to him, told him that how I felt about it, that I'd really prefer a in person, and he obliged. So we talked. I interviewed with him, interviewed with some other people that were working with the company. Turns out I was not very good at sales, but he did ask if I would consider a sales engineering opportunity just based on my background, and that's how I'm here today.
And there was a piece in there where he basically said, like, you're no good at this and you should do this, kind of like, it was some friendly coaching at that point.
Yeah, no, it was good, and actually, I'm really glad that he did that because being in a more technical role, I realized I would have missed, even though I wasn't interested in coding all day, every day, I would have missed solving the similar problems.
Yeah, I love that. I love that people can like chat with you and you're like headed down one path and you're like, I'm going to do this thing. And they like say, you're great at X, Y, and Z. Have you ever considered? And it like changes your whole course, which is exactly what happened to you. And I think you've landed in the perfect spot for Matt, which is awesome.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's break down a little bit just more about kind of your role at FusionAuth and like how that kind of sales process works, since it's not really a traditional sales role, as you kind of talked about already.
For sure. Yeah, so it's not a traditional sales role. I would even consider it not your traditional sales engineer role, at least from my experience, and so we're really responsible for that technical win for customers that are coming in wanting to evaluate the product. But the way we kind of approach in our go-to-market strategy, a lot of who we talk to first are developers that have their own area of expertise in, adjacent ideas of how software fits together, and they're needing to do auth. And so we really work with customers pretty deeply in their architecture and how they need to integrate with the product. Uh, that said, we still do demos, but we're doing a lot more of support role in that pre-sale side of things.
Nice. How far does that go too? Like, so as a DevRel, I sometimes sit in on like the I'll call it pre-sales meeting, but it's kind of more of a customer has already gotten to Fusion off and they're checking it out, and like we're just kind of responding to like questions they might have and things like that. But as someone like so technical, are you setting up like a full repo to show them, hey, here's how you get on like Next.js with FusionAuth? How what To what extent does that go for you?
Yeah, so actually, I get to heavily rely on DevRel and people like Dan Moore that leads that team, and does our documentation. There's really nothing that I have to create from scratch. It's knowing where that stuff is and what customers need from talking with the customer to be able to direct them down the right path. And there have been opportunities where I've paired with someone on a Go app or a .NET or whatever they're working in. Kubernetes and Istio was one that was more recent that I had to pull in and engineer too. But that's cross-functionally being able to have escalation paths across the organization is awesome too.
Yeah, for sure. So when you're selling Fusion Auth and you have to compare it to like the 10,000 pound elephant in the room, Auth Zero or Okta, like what do you tell people, and how does Fusion Auth get set apart from some other solutions that are out there?
Yeah, actually, I almost like the challenge of going up against Auth0. These days, I think you can read enough about them on the internet to know what people are saying. But we really pride ourselves on being easy to work with. Customers come in, they have a technical resource right away. Just as a product, we're really community driven, we're product led. I don't know if everyone knows this, but we do have a free forever community edition that is completely agnostic to how you deploy it, how you download it and run it, the languages that you're using to integrate with it. And so that opens up a lot of exposure to different things on the pre-sale side of things. But I think that's been great for my overall like just knowledge as an engineer. But yeah, I think I lost track of the original question, so I'm gonna
No,
stop
just
there.
kind of the comparison of trying to sell against, and let me add to what you just said real quick first, though. So, on top of that, like we have a Docker one-click install. It's really awesome to use. I just wrote a blog on how to put it up on Fly.io. You can put it on AWS, like anywhere you want it. You can run our community edition with unlimited users. So definitely go check that side of it out. Now, back to the original question, like a SaaS provider essentially is what Auth0 is. Like they have kind
Right.
of they're like tenant shared and everyone kind of comes into that. How does FusionAuth differentiate themselves from that solution? And how do you sell it to
Sure.
people?
Yeah, and that's part of that, we don't it's agnostic to how you want to deploy it. Self-hosted, I think we're fundamentally built on-prem is what I've heard our CTO, Daniel DeGroff say. And I think a lot of customers that have that requirement, that's, something that they just need to do, but they have the flexibility to do it with FusionAuth. Feature-wise, across the board, a lot of the features these days are table stakes. And so, we do have feature parity with Auth0. I would say near, if not 100%. A lot of what we do is going to be, implemented differently because it's our engineers versus theirs. But then we differentiate on, I think, just the flexibility. A lot of the abstractions that we have built into some of our objects make them flexible across different use cases, but then also we really love open standards that make us interoperable with a lot of different systems. So OAuth, obviously OIDC and SAML, FIDO, SCIM, all of those pieced together in a way that makes it a really flexible tool.
I love that you're just throwing acronyms at me. I hope people are catching them. So when we talk about like that kind of standalone first mentality, or however you want to phrase that, when I look at like authentication from my background, so I worked in SAP land for over a decade. I wrote ABAP, like back end kind of culture, if you will, and then it crept into the front end. But I've always been a web developer first, and I'm always like open source first. And I know FusionAuth isn't an open source product, but everything that kind of surrounds it is open source. What are some of the challenges when someone that's like new to like let's say web development and open source and getting them into a FusionAuth product versus like a clerk or something like that? And how do you position that sales wise? Is it, oh, you should go for them and just check that out first? Or can you actually like walk them through FusionAuth and like take them to the next level where it becomes like an enterprise type scale?
It's an interesting point because if you ask, Chat or Bard, your AI solutions out there, they actually will call FusionAuth open source.
Right.
And so part of that, I think, we do have the API first, way of doing things. There's definitely an API for that, and that there is a free version to use and download in any way and deploy and get working with. So the documentation I think helps a lot with that too. And so there's not a large challenge there because when we talk about going with other truly open source tools, there become all these like offshoots of that product that either become less maintained or more maintained depending on where the community is deciding kind of for the users of that system, what's going to be important, which, we listen to our community too. But at the end of the day, our community knows that we are standing behind our product and we're going to make sure that the different functionalities are continued to be maintained for the long term.
Blair likes the there's an API for that. That's good stuff, Blair. Thanks. So yeah, I guess in that regard too, from a educational perspective, I know us at FusionAuth, especially on the DevRel side of things, we're huge about like explaining to others like what a jot actually is or what pixie really means and things like that. Do you find in your sales engineering side of things, are you having to like teach people or like pull them along? It's not just like a login form anymore. There's so much more to it these days. Are you having to break down like MFA and passkey and things like that as you're selling the product?
I would say not typically. We most time have a pretty technical audience when we're initially engaging with a customer. That's not to say we won't have other people that are. And we recently hired another sales engineer she's really strong technically as well. And we've been working together to, hey, how do we get more simple when we do have those less technical stakeholders on the call? So definitely something that we come up across. I think something FusionAuth does well. I've given one talk that I'm going to give him credit. Dan Moore actually wrote for me. I think it was a talk that he was going to do and then was busy. But a lot, and he'll do talks, Brian will do talks, but a lot of those will be, again, agnostic to FusionAuth and more covering the guidelines of OAuth and all things related to, auth in and auth and so with that, I don't know that we're necessarily deep diving with Pixie. Customers know that they need it, but Fusion also makes it easy to implement by just toggling on and then providing code examples that show how to handle, creating the verifier and presenting the challenge later in order to make that stuff work.
Yeah, that's fair. From kind of trends that are out in the industry right now, what do you see in kind of your sales engineering field in the context of like identity and access management? Is this something that people are reaching out for, or is it just a need that they have to replace with?
Yeah, I would say absolutely a need, pretty critical component of any application that has users that need to log in. I think we're definitely seeing a trend towards death of the password, or at least that's what people would like to see. So a lot more passwordless types of flows, whether that's clickable links through SMS or email or collecting codes. WebAuthn is the biometrics on your device, so whether that's Face ID or a fingerprint or some cross-platform like a YubiKey. So trending towards more of these frictionless modes of, even depending on where in the world users are logging in from, SMS is real popular in some countries and not in others. Others, they don't even have email. And so it really depends
Yeah.
on who the user bases are and where they're at in the world.
Tell me more about this YubiKey. I'm not familiar with it.
Yeah, so YubiKey is, I think that's like a trademarked one, but basically a device that you can plug into your phone or sorry, into your laptop and then click a button or a fingerprint reader could be on it. So there's options, but then that you can carry with you and then be on a machine that's not your normal machine and still use that as your WebAuthn authenticator.
I feel like before every single person in the world was carrying a mobile phone, back in like 2005, I carried around like this thing that had like digits that would rotate, and it reminds me of like a authenticator application of old, and it brings me back to like those old days. And at one point I thought that became insecure, so it's interesting to kind of see how the trends have changed over the years.
For
How
sure.
do you work, kind of with our development team? And what I mean by that, like, I'm pretty familiar with our side and how we interact with you, but like when we're talking about FusionAuth, it's all developers from the top down. Our CEO is a developer, our CTO is a developer, you name it. Like, it's pretty much all engineers. Are you coming back often with like, we need to add X feature, or is it kind of like the product's pretty or is solid and we just need to like fix a bug here or there? What is it from a sales side to work with that development team back and forth?
I feel very fortunate. Not only is our product, critical for potential customers out there, but just the product itself is very buttoned up, to say the least. And leaning on that, we do work with the developers. Typically, we're promising features to customers, and then later go back and say, "Hey, we need this built." Totally kidding. But we are able to work with customers to maybe influence the roadmap. We have a product and sales engineering meeting where we're talking about like what are the common threads across meetings that we're having with customers, features that they're asking for to try to prioritize work of what what should come next. So there's a lot of that engagement, and there are other asks. Even post sales. We are a smaller team, so there's still several hats worn by many people in the organization, and we'll collaborate on how to best support customers that are already using us and already in production.
Nice. What is the like most interesting case that you've seen from a sales side, at least, where FusionAuth has helped solve a customer's problem, or like how we came in with FusionAuth and like dramatically changed the landscape for a product? And you don't have to name names because I know that gets a little sensitive.
Yeah, I mean, there's a few. So some, I think the biggest ones are when they come from a DIY solution to using a vendor, is the biggest significant change. They're no longer managing their cloud environments. They're no longer maintaining these repositories of auth, and they're able to now implement things and know that it's done securely, whether it's MFA or some other feature. I do want to say too, with our cloud environments, I think we've had customers in different spaces with just we really cut our teeth in the gaming industry. So there's lots of users, but then there's lots of users trying to log in at one time. And so working with gaming customers, or we have some professional sports organizations that are streaming games and use our services, and the ability that we've worked with them to figure out the exact infrastructure to match the behavior of their users, to make sure that everyone can get in and watch what they need to watch. No one wants to miss their home team. So that's been cool to see, and just our ability to do that and willingness to do that, I think makes us unique.
I have a quick comment on the home team thing. I do want to miss the Pistons playing because it's awful right now. But the Lions, yes, I definitely want access to them.
I've seen memes, yes.
It's bad right now. So you kind of said the promised features, and of course Dan is ever present. So he got pretty excited about that. His mouth fell open. So good job there. And then
Nice.
follow on, we have Aaron with us, and he's wondering, is there a new feature customers are currently very excited about?
Yeah, so I think one thing, and I don't know, I might get in trouble for this, but we've been promising custom scopes for a long time. And this is something that I know we're actively working on and looking to deliver like end of this year, early 2024. And that custom scopes covers the use case of essentially delegating to third-party apps to, I'm logged into something and I want to give that app access to things in my Dropbox, or vice versa. And so it's going to be those types of use cases that are covered, and I think that's what I can think most near term.
Can you break that down just a smidge more for me? So I
Sure.
know that we have like roles and user groups and things like that. What's the differentiator there?
Yeah, so I think it's a, a user is delegating authorization to the client to access some resources on behalf of that user. And so if you think about uh, it's not the exact same context, but you're in an app and you want to upload pictures from your phone, and you give that app, I guess it's might be the same context, but that app says, "Hey, I would like to see select some pictures, or say your whole camera roll." And I think everyone with a phone's probably experienced that before, but that's kind of what we're talking about.
Nice. Dan's wondering, what does a day in the life of a sales engineer look like? Do you wake up calling people immediately and then drink a coffee? What's that look like for you?
Almost. I do like getting up early. We have, a global customer base, so and I think a lot of our team operates pretty early in the morning, and so yeah, checking emails, but then starting to get on customer calls, working through customer demos, definitely doing some research on things that maybe haven't been as deep in that area of FusionAuth for a while, so I need to go read some documentation, maybe try to recreate some issue they were having, and then come back around and answer those questions. I would say discovery is probably a big part of those initial meetings and one of my more favorite parts, and trying to be more of a solution architect, even though we're not necessarily designing the whole system for them. We're really helping them. We're trying to understand the problems they're actually trying to solve, and then help them understand how FusionAuth can fill those holes.
Nice. I love it. So there's 2 or 3 coffees then? Is that what I heard? Or
On a usual day, yeah.
if you can't tell, because Matt's kind of slouched down a little bit. He's pretty hardcore. Used to own what's the word I'm looking for?
CrossFit gym.
CrossFit gym, right? So
Yeah.
Matt probably gets a workout or 2 in a day as well.
I do. Yeah. So I break up my day, where, because again, I'll start pretty early, and then, more of our EU and Aussie customers are, I'm able to talk to directly then, and they can email back. We also use Slack, but then break up, get the workout in the garage, and then come back to it in the afternoon.
Nice. So you're pushing up like a 300-ish on the bench these days, or?
No, CrossFit's like, because we don't do farm work anymore, you pretend to do farm work. So carrying stuff and running and jumping up on boxes.
Box jumps. Gotta love box
Yeah.
jumps. Whew. All right. I have one final one, and it's for all of those people that were kind of like you a couple years ago. What career advice do you have for aspiring sales engineers?
Yeah, it's tough, right? Because I think again, there's different realms of it, and my scope of exposure is FusionAuth. And so if you want to be a technical sales engineer, that you understand the fundamentals of software engineering and how APIs work and cloud environments and firewalls and things like that. And then there's, the UI component, and there's other, UI first type roles that I think, there's really robust ERP systems. That's like a totally difficult and different kind of sales engineering. But I think for what we do here, if you're, want to be technical, that's definitely a big part of it. Like, build some stuff, and then make sure you're talking to customers and being an evangelist. I think, I don't know, I see where, like, you could be good at sales engineering, how we do this at FusionAuth, because you've got the technical background, you're outgoing, talking to people, you're used to teaching people how to code and build things, and that's a lot of what we're doing. And then we're just also reading the RFCs of all the things that are used to, build the product, and understand, how customers can use it optimally.
It's funny how many kind of developer relations and sales engineering, and I talked to a gentleman the other day who's a talent advocate. Like those roles, if you're like technical enough, and then you can talk with people on top of it, I
Mhm.
think they really they all kind of start to be part of one kind of trend towards a goal. So the one thing I don't want to do is actually, sign here's your $10,000 or whatever, like the money side of all this. It always scares me. So I'll leave that to you guys.
Okay.
Any last minute thoughts, comments, Matt, before I let you go?
None that I can think of off the top of my head. I appreciate the time. Thanks for having me on. Definitely a little nervous. I wasn't sure what to expect, but appreciate the conversation.
Absolutely. I mean, you're my first Matt. I had all the marks last month, so I'm gonna have to find all of our Matts in house this month, I guess, and we'll go from there. So thanks for coming on, Matt. I really appreciate it, and we'll catch you next time.
Thanks, Alex.
When you build an app, writing a login, registration, and user management system seems simple. But pretty soon you're implementing complex standards like OAuth, OpenID Connect, and SAML. Plus, you'll need to build out additional login features. And don't forget all the acronyms you need to comply with. Secure Auth is not optional, but the time that it takes to build it is. Save time and use FusionAuth. FusionAuth provides authentication, authorization, and user management for any app. It's built for devs to deploy anywhere and integrate with anything in minutes. Seriously, anywhere, anything, and in minutes. FusionAuth installs on any platform, any device, anywhere in the world, including AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, and other clouds. And it scales to hundreds of millions of users. To keep user data safe, FusionAuth provides all the controls you need to manage passwords and comply with security requirements and regulations. When users log in with FusionAuth, they'll see your brand, not ours. Theme login pages, style emails, and localized messages to ensure your brand is front and center. And FusionAuth comes with a pre-built management UI to manage and report on users. So stop grinding on auth and go build something awesome. Get started using FusionAuth for free. Wait, for free? Are we sure that's supposed to be like that?